Remind me to inform Pete that mounting a projector to the ceiling via magnets is a terrible idea. I'm honestly surprised it held up for as long as it did. I can get back to narrating now that the gag is done. Why didn't the Institute just have the projector on the ground again? Yeah, I don't know either. Good day, mates. My name is Mordecai, and welcome back to the show, where a relatively inexperienced roleplayer narrates various RPG-related stories as a learning tool. Sometimes, at a tabletop role-playing game, player versus player action occurs. This action can take a number of forms, some of which are enjoyable, depending upon what kind of group is at the table. For example, a group that prefers friendly competition would be more open to player versus player action in the form of things like cooking competitions, as opposed to arena fighting against other players at the table. Today's story features a group of roleplayers whom are facing the consequences of when player versus player action is taken too far with respect to the group. Before we get started with the narration, if you like my content and want to see more of it, be sure to subscribe and like the video. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Enjoy! Let's delve into the often terrifying world of r/RPG-Horror-Stories. This story is titled PvP Results in Soured Feelings, and is written by user Rastrick. First time posting a horror story, but I've frequently read stories on the subreddit and wanted to get opinions on who's the jerk in this situation. Maybe it's all of us. The horror is fairly mild, but may have resulted in the loss of a longtime member of our gaming group. Here goes. We've just recently started a new campaign, with one of our players switching roles to a DM. The gimmick of the opening of this particular game has been a tournament where the players, and a handful of NPCs, have been competing against each other in a number of events. Most have been odd little mini-games, but there's been a bit of player versus player-like encounters thrown in. We'd been in this tournament for several sessions at this point. Even in the battles, there's been no actual danger to our characters, it's just been a friendly competition. No stakes besides the prizes we might win, which will probably be shared once we become a proper party, and go out adventuring with each other. We've just been building camaraderie and getting a few levels under our belts before we go out into the wider world. The final event of this grand tournament was a Battle Royale. Every competitor is plunked down in an arena with a structure in the middle. There's locked chests containing useful items, and hidden keys to these chests. The items weren't necessary to win, but you got to keep them, and the last one standing won the whole tournament. Each competitor started in a little niche, far away enough from the others so that they should be protected from being attacked before they got a turn to go. Should be, unless, that is, a monk with 40 feet of movement dashes over to a corner where another player is in their niche. Which is what our monk player does to our rogue player. The rest of the table is flabbergasted. We're all making beelines for other objectives, or engaging with the NPCs to slow them down. We question why this is happening. After all, there was no previous animosity between the characters or the players. The monk's justification was, he's a rogue. I could get thieves' tools from him to open the chests. Let's pause the story for a moment. The monk is going after the rogue because of the possibility that the particular player is carrying a set of tools designed for picking locks. I'm inclined to say that this is a form of metagaming, as whilst it is possible that the rogue has informed the monk that he has thieves' tools, this isn't established as definitive knowledge. It does make sense for a rogue to be carrying thieves' tools, but something about engaging a fellow player because of what he might have rubs me the wrong way. Plus, whilst I understand that this is meant to be a friendly player versus player tournament, it's obvious to me that this is very much an anti-player action. Let's resume the story to see how the rest of it pans out. It had been just previously established that per the rules of this particular engagement, you could not loot from other people. The monk is reminded of this, and is asked if he wants to change what he's doing. No. He's still going to corner the rogue. So they wail on each other in a long, drawn-out fight. The rogue is getting visibly very frustrated and unhappy. He's not having fun, and the entire table knows it. He eventually makes his frustrations even clearer by saying things like, "Why is this happening to me?" and "PvP is always a bad idea." The beatings do not cease. The rest of us start keeping a very close eye on what the monk player is doing on his turns. We ask him questions about his abilities and how he's accomplishing what he's doing, and find out that some things are off, which are corrected. It's unclear whether he was honestly misunderstanding some of his abilities, or whether he was purposefully cheating. The rogue goes down, and the rest of the Battle Royale is wrapped up. With the tournament being over, we get some parting gifts, and head off to accomplish the main plot. The mood at the table improves considerably as we start actually adventuring, and the particular session ends. The next morning, the rogue makes his feelings known in our group chat. I won't post it word for word unless it's strictly necessary, but it boils down to, "I did not have fun last night. I hate PvP, and if this game is going to be us ruining each other's fun for lulz, I'm out!" The rogue is met with assurances from the other players that we value his feelings, and the rest of the game will definitely be less competitive now that the tournament is over. There was no response from the monk. He leaves the message on read. A whole week passes, and our next scheduled game comes up. The monk doesn't show up. He hasn't messaged anyone privately or in the group chat. He hasn't read any of the messages since the rogues. The DM feels terrible because he's not a very experienced DM, and he thought a little bit of player versus player would be fun and not a problem. The rogue feels guilty that he's driven the monk out of the group, and the rest of us feel awful because this person is our friend. While he can be abrasive at the table sometimes, our complaints about him don't go beyond the grumblings you might have over the behaviour of a friend you've known for years. And the last time he was a handful at a table like this, he was going through some rather personal stuff. So, I guess it is a horror story, in that everyone feels horrible. And that's where the story ends. At the beginning of the story, our poster wanted to know who at the table was acting like a jerk. There is quite a bit to unpack, so we'll start at the beginning. Having a big tournament where the group of players initially meet up, it's a fantastic idea. A neat spin on an old trope for storytelling. It gives the players a motivation by which to have the party stick together and provides the premise for them meeting up. This is all fairly solid. But then you have the entire party battle each other in what's intended to be a lightweight player versus environment brawl in a battle royale, when the player versus player action is meant to be friendly, and you have players in an environment where they need to battle each other in order to progress in some fashion. So the premise for an imminent disaster is already established, and that is definitely on the Dungeon Master for setting it up, even if it was an experiment. I don't fault the attempt, since without hands-on practice it can be hard to learn. but I can fault the results, especially when they could have been prevented by Dungeon Master intervention. Furthermore, it's unclear to me whether or not the rogue asked the monk to stop. We have the rogue complaining about the PvP, making his frustrations known to the group, and throwing his own temper tantrum around. But it's strongly implied that he never directly said the word stop, or tried to get the monk to stop through some other means, especially out of character. So whilst I fault the monk for initiating combat in the way that he did, I am seeing plenty of opportunities for the rogue to say stop, or for the DM to intervene and prevent the situation from escalating. And whilst the DM tried to remind the monk that his goal was unobtainable, getting the rogue's thieves tools, that's not the same as preventing the player versus player action outright. Perhaps the final straw is that, post-mortem, the rogue has another temper tantrum the next morning, which appears to have been what prompted the monk to effectively retreat from the group. I will say that in this situation, that the group should reach out to the monk to find out where he's at. It is unhealthy for a group to be on the receiving end of a person venting their frustrations on other players at the table, regardless of whoever that's towards or why. Reach out, talk with the monk and the rogue, and figure out what's best for the table. But if we were to try to figure out who the jerk is in this situation, I am sorry, but this is one of those situations where everyone sucks in some capacity. And as a relatively inexperienced role player, this story and the lessons that are learnt, that can be learnt, are something that's going to stick with me for the foreseeable future. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe and leave a like. It's free to do, and you can change your mind later. If you have any thoughts on this story or feedback on how it can improve, feel free to leave a comment. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you all next time.